Why the heck do you even need to have an account with Microsoft in the first place?
So that way they can steal all your data.
And keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the Apple ID is not required to use the Mac.
Alpha's old enough to become a dad by the time 2027 the 12.9 inch iPad Air rolls around. But because we're not musicians, well, you are a musician, but I'm not.
Ahem. I wanted to say, I am. I have a concert tomorrow, in fact. Z tier being the bottom. That product should have been canceled years ago. And they updated it!
We waited 4 years for the Mac Pro to get updated. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the iTunes Fanboy Podcast. As always, I'm Teddy Magger from the iTunes Fanboy.
And my name is Alpha DeWolf.
And we unfortunately are joined without Tabbycat 406 since he is unavailable for tonight's episode. But in the meanwhile, let's just go ahead and let's just talk about the latest Apple news because we have a lot of topics to talk about today. So our first topic to talk about that we're going to discuss is that Apple is going to pull out the Goldman Sachs deal within 12 to 15 months for the Apple Card.
I hope there's another bank that takes on that deal because I've been trying to get the Apple Card. They just won't. They won't give me one.
I personally, we've gone in case you guys don't know from previous episodes of TIFP, I'm not a big fan of credit cards just because I'm not a big fan of having to worry about paying back money. As I'm not generally just a weird little fact about me is that I'm not generally big on having to know that I have to do something, which is why I tend to do all my work or else things I have to do as quick as I can. So that's why I personally just don't like credit cards, so I'm okay with
something I've learned, especially from using my Discover card. In fact, do I have my wallet on me? Yes, I do. Nothing on the front. Nothing on the front. Good. This is my credit card. It's a Discover card. And I basically almost use this for every purchase that I make now. And it's because I discovered it gives me cash back, which means it might not be a lot, but I'm technically saving a little bit of money. So,
I still find cash back to be I understand that cash back can be a fun opportunity, but I still consider it to be a bit of a strings attached sort of deal, and again, you have to pay off credit cards at a later date anyway, so it's not necessarily cash back, and I'm also not...
Well, technically, you can pay them off any time.
Yeah, you can pay them off any time, but it just adds more steps to the process, which, again, is part of the reason why I use Apple products, is because it involves fewer steps, unlike Windows.
Yes.
But, getting back...
funny thing about... that happened Windows related today this morning. Kicked me out of my Microsoft account.
Windows did the same thing with me too just recently on my computer at school. So as a result, it kept giving me errors when I tried to save my files in Microsoft Office.
It gets worse than that. Does your school use Windows 10 or Windows 11?
11 now. They upgraded to 11.
Oh, that's odd. Well, that's weird because what happened to me this morning, I opened up my laptop, I tried to log in, all of a sudden, there's no Microsoft account signed into this. Therefore, we can't let you in your account. We can't let you go to the desktop.
This is such a common Windows error because even on my Windows 7 desktop, I sometimes get errors saying the user profile service failed to log on. You cannot log in to your computer. And even in Windows 10, well, you failed to log in too. And there's other failed logins on 10, and I'm sure Windows 8 and 8.1 have failed logins.
Dear Microsoft, the EU gets it, you get it too. What happened this morning was completely unnecessary.
Oh, yes.
You did not need to kick me out of my laptop because you can't figure out the... Why the heck do you even need to have an account with Microsoft in the first place?
So that way they can steal all your data.
And keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the Apple ID is not required to use the Mac.
No, it's not. I'm not saying that Apple's a secure company and that they're all perfect about privacy, but you don't need an Apple ID to use any Apple device.
You can use all these devices signed out. Now, will the experience be as great as if you're signed in? No, obviously not. But you can still use the thing without an account of any sort.
Yes, it's the problem of Windows is that you don't really need a Microsoft account for much of the things that people do on Windows.
So, again, Microsoft, they earned it. They've earned it how many years ago? They've still earned it today.
They earned it back in the 80s when they earned it back in the 70s or 80s when they ripped off CPM.
You know, imagine if we did an operating system awards every year. I'd probably go through the trouble of creating a life-size toilet award and give it to Microsoft. Because remember how MKBHD, he used to use this toilet bowl-shaped award for Bust of the Year in his smartphone awards?
I don't watch MKBHD a whole lot, so no, I do not remember that.
Well, he used to do that. I'd probably go the extra mile and make it life-size. Engrave the Microsoft logo into the toilet seat and mail it to them.
Every penny.
Worth every single penny. Oh, yes. You know what? Maybe I'll ship it myself. Maybe I'll find a way to stuff it inside my car and drive all the way to California and hand it to them in person.
Oh, or no, I believe it's Seattle.
I thought they were in Silicon Valley like the rest of big tech.
Nope, they're in Seattle. So is Amazon.
Oh well, don't care. They suck.
But
anywho, what were we talking about?
We were talking about Apple Card, but one of the more proud things I am about Apple pulling out the Goldman Sachs deals, I'm actually happy about this because as I already explained in one of my videos about how Apple, the Bank of Apple may need to close soon, I'm pretty excited. This new news excites me a lot because it's the first major pushback against Apple services. Their attempt to make services revenue and focusing a little less on the hardware, which I do really appreciate.
And the thing, I'd really like to complain about that because you might be against it, but a lot of society today in terms of payment methods is built on credit cards. And like, why do we choose Apple products over Android and Windows? It's because they clean up the experience. Sure, it might be easy for me just to open up my wallet, pull out my debit card, and insert that, but the thing is, Discover does not make paying it off the most easiest thing. You have to go through their slow, clunky app that it just doesn't feel very refined. And that's something that Apple has 100% cleaned up. Yeah, that's true. Apple, on the other hand, they make it way too easy to pay off, which is, hey, wouldn't you agree that'd be a good thing for the consumer?
Yeah, that is a good thing, and in fact, that's one thing I really do like about the Apple Card, and that's why I want to try to start incorporate. I haven't figured out how to do this yet, but I want to I want to figure out if I can get my debit card working with Apple Pay, so that way I can just pay for everything with Apple Pay.
Oh, I've gotten my debit card and credit card to work with Apple Pay.
Yeah, I use MasterCard, so
Yeah. But here's another problem, too, that might end up making you wish you'd have a credit card every now and then. Not every store or retailer accepts debit cards. I found that out the hard way once, and boy, did I really get screwed.
That's why I always carry cash on me. Yeah, I always carry physical cash on me to help prevent that. And if they don't accept cash nor debit cards, then they're not worth, like, I don't know, Starbucks. How Starbucks doesn't accept cash anymore. They don't deserve my business anyway.
Well, they don't even get my business because they're not in my area.
And I don't drink coffee nor tea nor any other Starbucks beverages, so I can't.
I like the strawberry acai.
Well, I technically do drink hot chocolate, but I rarely drink it.
Oh yeah, I forgot they sell that.
Even when I do drink that, there's just a lot better coffee shops in my area, so, and cheaper coffee shops too.
Yeah. We're supposed to get a Dunkin' Donuts here at some point, though. That's been a rumor going around for at least a year now.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we start talking, because this is not the Coffee Fanboy Podcast or TCFP, we need to focus more on our next topic, which is that. So remember those rumors about Apple? Remember how Apple bought Intel's modem business as they're to help make their own custom modems?
Oh yeah. Are they finally doing it?
Nope. Apple surrendered the whole business.
What?
Yep, they gave up on it completely since they couldn't get up to their standards.
Wow. They really got screwed with Intel then.
Yep.
Back when Intel still owned their modems, and I guess when Apple bought them. That's unfortunate.
Yep. Poor Intel.
Yeah, poor us. That means now the only one left is Qualcomm.
Yeah. Oh, well. I guess since there's not too much to talk about this, we now need to talk about our next podcast topic, which is that the full iPhone 16 lineup is rumored to receive the capacitive action button for extended functionality via a pressure sensor. So in simpler terms, you'll be able to use the capacitive action button for multiple different tasks because they'll have pressure sensitivity. So you can, for example, press lightly to open the camera, but you can press down harder to open the weather app, for example.
I'm still not a fan of it.
Huh?
I'm still not a fan of the action button, and giving this more dynamic control like that, to me, you still can't beat the Switch.
Yeah, I'm personally okay with this idea since I think it's cool, but just as long as capacitive buttons don't come to other buttons, so that way we can actually have something, so that way we don't wind up with phones freezing or else flat and we have no buttons to check if they're flat, or we have no buttons to restart them.
Well, that and another thing, there's one thing about the capacitive action button that kind of makes me a bit nervous. Some people hold their phones like this.
Oh.
Where's my thumb?
That's a very Apple actually, this rumor might actually be false in some senses, since even though this is a rumor from a reputable source from what I know, this could be false because, well, let me grab one of my other phones to show you this. Here we go, my iPhone 6. if I held it like now, obviously 6 is too small to demonstrate this, but Apple actually shows advertisements of people holding their phones like this in the iPhone 15 Pro gaming ads.
Why would they? If you're playing games on your phone and you're holding it in landscape, why would you hold it like this? This is kind of dumb. I would hold it something like this.
They show it in a similar position where it would still interrupt where the supposed capacitive action button would be going.
So yeah, the reason why it makes me nervous about that is because unlike physical buttons, I can rest the physical buttons on my thumb and I know, okay, don't push too hard there or you're going to change something. Meanwhile, a capacitive button, you're not going to exactly remember that that's there. And because it doesn't move when you push it, you're going to accidentally actuate that button and not even know it. And then your phone's going to do all sorts of weird stuff.
Yeah, actually, you make a very good point.
So, yeah, that to me is the biggest reason why I don't want that. I think it would make the smartphone experience worse, especially if you use it in landscape mode. Because that right there is a very common point on where I grip the phone. Usually my thumb is up against the ringer switch, which doesn't bother me. I can't really engage the ringer switch while I'm holding it this way because it's a side-to-side movement, not an up and down movement.
Yeah, so, that concerns me. That concerns me too in regards to cases because I have a really thick OtterBox case on my phone, and right now
that's going to be really difficult to actuate.
Yeah, so that'll be really difficult. So I wonder what OtterBox will do if the rumor winds up becoming true, or other bulky case makers. Since right now with my 14 Pro case, I can barely activate the mute switch to the point where I just use the control center because it's barely accessible.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I really don't like that idea. I hope Apple catches that in testing. I just do not like that idea at all.
To be fair, they caught the capacitive buttons in testing, or at least if that was rumor or true, so maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only reason why the capacitive home button work is because the only time you're on that button is intentionally. You have to intentionally rest your hand on that button. You're not using it to grip the device. You're not using it for other. Well, yeah, it's there for a function and one function only, and you can't accidentally engage it for another thing.
Technically, two functions because you can use it to activate.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, my point is, you're not holding the device in that way where you're resting on top of that button.
Yeah, that's true.
That, and they also make it big, prominent, and obvious to the point where, okay, let's not rest your thumb there because, well, if you push that, something's going to happen that you don't want to. So I think that's why the solid-state button worked so well on the 7 and 8 and the SE series. But in terms of putting capacitive buttons on the side, that's just not going to work well because you hold your phone on the side. That's where you grip your phone. So, yeah, it's not. To me, this is not going to work well at all if they do it that way.
Oh, all right, but let's move on to our next topic, which is that a real photo of a prototype iPhone 16 Pro battery has leaked with a metal shell and a redesigned connector to fix the heat issues.
That's a good thing, especially considering what's been going on for the past couple months.
I haven't seen. From what I understand, it's not. It's a little bit of an issue. It's blown more out of proportion, but still, I guess we gotta keep the iPhone battery critics happy.
Well, actually, even I experienced some thermal overload on both of my devices. Actually, my XS Max and my 13 Pro Max. And The only time I can repeatedly get it to work is if I open the app PlugShare and I browse through it for 5 minutes or something like that. Every time I open PlugShare, my devices instantly start getting hot.
Look, that's bad optimization on PlugShare's part.
Yeah, it is bad optimization, but the device should be able to handle the thermal stress like that. Shouldn't it?
Yeah.
And it's not.
But either way, the metal shell is also going to bring better battery life, which, okay, I guess is fine. I mean, as we say on the show, if you need more battery life on your phone than what's already offered, you're too addicted to your phone.
Yeah, especially considering when you buy a new iPhone, you can literally get it to last 2 days.
At
least I have. And I'm a heavy user.
I don't even use my phone. I don't use my phone that heavily, but I just use an iPhone. But mind you, I have a 14 Pro, which is not known for having a good battery life. But I still can go around 3 days without charging it.
Yeah, that's... The battery life itself is good, but the thermal issues should get under control. Because, yeah, it's not that often that your phone will be experiencing that, but for unoptimized apps, or maybe you are doing power-intensive stuff like gaming or, say, something like that. Or you're in a low-signal area and your phone is constantly switching cell towers. Yeah, that'll drive thermals, actually. It should be able to handle cooling itself, and for the past quite a long while, actually, Apple has not been doing a good job at handling that thermal stress. Like, there have been times where I've actually had to put my phone down because it got too hot.
I actually had to do that back when I would upload my YouTube video. Back when I would upload my YouTube videos on my iPhone 8 Plus back in 2020. Back in late 2020 and early 20 and throughout, most of 2021, I discovered that I couldn't actually have it charging and uploading the video at the same time because that drove the thermals up too much to the point where several times I remember putting my 8 Plus out of its case because of that.
Yeah, I suppose that's another advantage to going caseless. The case will actually insulate the bulk of the heat, which is not what you want to do.
Yeah, nowadays I don't have to deal with that issue quite as much anymore since now my MacBook endures most of the heat, but because I edit my videos and upload my videos on my Mac now, but...
And once you get the new Mac, then you won't have to worry about heat at all.
Yeah, that'll be... I'm so close to that new Mac. I'll have it within...
How far off are you?
I'm trying
give
to
a percentage.
I'm over 90% to the way.
Oh, so you're almost there. That's exciting.
Almost to that new MacBook.
What color would you get it in?
Space black.
I hate that color so much.
I like it because it's a deeper black, but that's just than space gray, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Well,
all right.
I guess we should get moving to our next topic because we still have quite a lot of topics to cover, being that Apple's working on their own proprietary cathode battery technology, which I have no idea how it works, but supposedly it's going to be better.
Well, I suppose if they can't invest in software exclusives that work with their phones, EU, thank you very much for screwing us, I guess they have to develop hardware advantages.
Again, Apple, please pull out the EU.
Yes.
Or actually, even better, the EU, please cease to exist.
Oh, like that's gonna happen.
Oh, that'll The EU is probably going to cease to exist one way or another, but we probably shouldn't go into that on TIFP.
Yep.
But
Well, I guess there's one good way to look at the battery thing. A battery technology has been a little bit stagnant at the moment, and perhaps we should find better ways to store energy for our devices.
yeah, I can see. I agree. I agree because if people are going to remain addicted to TikTok, then they need a longer battery to help fuel their TikTok addiction.
That, and also, say they do eventually come up with more hardware features for our phones.
We need
Say
more.
they manage to increase energy density in their custom cells. That would allow them to shrink the physical size of the battery and make room for those features.
And more importantly, a lot of the elements that go into current lithium-ion batteries are they're actually being mined. So, and this is actually a bit of a controversial topic, but what so the reason why one of the main reasons why Apple is actually keeping a lot of their production in China is because if Apple moves out of China, the Chinese government has threatened to stop giving Apple the necessary rare earth elements that they need to make a lot of the components, such as for the batteries, and that is because China has. I'm not gonna go. I don't know too much about this. From what I know, they've bribed a lot of the governments in Central Africa, especially the Congo, to to exploit children in the mines there and work in very dangerous conditions. And so I don't know if cathodes involve as child labor, but if cathodes don't, then that can mean
It's
that Apple can get out of
Cobalt
China.
is the cobalt is what they're mining in Africa. That's where all the child labor is coming from.
Yeah.
So I don't remember if what section of the battery is cobalt in. Let me check that. No, I don't want AliExpress. Give me a new tab. Give me a new tab. Thank you. What is the cathode? Come on. Of a lithium ion battery. All right. Cobalt. Yep.
Oh, actually, cut that entire discussion out since I don't want to get canceled.
Well, actually, no, I wouldn't, because that would help solve child labor if Apple comes up with a cathode that isn't cobalt.
Actually, that's a good. If they can do, oh my, that's incredible. That's incredible.
That's smarter thinking than I would have thought of.
Oh, and
Not only does it help Apple potentially come up with a better technology for the battery cells, it helps with child labor.
Now, I'm not saying that child labor is bad, because it isn't, but exploiting.
Well, it
children is bad.
depends on what type it is.
Yeah, but mining, children should not be mining in dangerous. Well, really, no one should be mining in dangerous conditions like that, but especially children.
Yeah, but like in my opinion, if children are willing to work at safe jobs,
They should.
let them earn an income if they are willing to do it and they want to do it. If it's against their will, nope, don't allow it. But to me, we have a big problem, especially with the youth of today, where a lot of the youth is not incentivized to work. And because of that, they're lazy. And they have no passion or drive or willing to want to work.
Yes, and this is truly Yeah, that's a truly sad. That's a truly sad thing. More importantly, keep the children should be willing to work because this used to because well keep in mind when in the 1800s when well talking about our own primary country the U.S. when the U.S. government began regulating child labor and basically outlawed it. That keep in mind, children didn't really have anything expensive to buy then. However, nowadays
Yeah.
children need cell phones. Most teenagers have cars. For goodness sakes, like we have things that we actually need to pay for.
Hey, editor Alpha DeWolf here. Yeah, we said some stuff, and you guys are not allowed to hear this stuff. And this right here is where the stuff used to be. All right. Now that stuff has been said, back to the show.
But the Apple Vision Pro is now potentially delayed until March due to still needing to complete final device testing.
I don't care about that product at all.
Neither
I have no reason to.
Neither do I, but more as we go on. Neither do I, but more importantly, it seems like Apple. The rumors seem to be going back and forth on when the Apple Vision Pro is going to release because the rumor said, Apple Vision Pro is delayed. No, it's coming out in January. No, it's coming out in March. Like the rumors are getting too conflicting to know what it actually is. Similar to AirPower.
I wish they could just say, we don't know. But they can't, because that's not a good headline.
Yeah, this is when the Apple Vision Pro was first announced, I became pretty worried and thought, I wonder if this is going to be another AirPower.
I don't think it is, but I'm pretty sure Apple is going to release it. I just don't think it's going to sell well at all. Because keep in mind, there are products that Apple has made that just haven't sold that well. Even in modern day, like the HomePod, for example.
Or the Power Mac G4 Cube.
Well, I was referring to like today, Tim Cook era.
Well,
They've released some stuff today that just hasn't caught on.
What else has Apple done today? The 2023 Mac Pro.
Yes! Oh, whoever buys that is an idiot. That is a terrible deal. Terrible deal.
You might as well. You could sell your room for a new Mac Pro, but in reality, which is how much the Mac Pro is overpriced.
Yeah, it's not. It's terrible. Really terrible. So, yeah, Apple's released some stuff that hasn't caught on by the public. And I think Vision Pro is going to be another one of those products.
Or trying to think of other stuff that Apple has done that hasn't. The 12-inch MacBook.
Oh yeah, that did not catch on very well at all.
The butterfly keyboard. Though that technically wasn't.
Oh, everyone hated that. I actually liked it. That was weird. I liked it.
It was Tabby liked the feel of it too, but he didn't like the unreliability of it.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part. But I mean, if reliability aside, I really like that keyboard, and I wish they would have figured out how to get it to work. But well, that's history.
Oh, what else has Apple done in the Tim Cook era that has failed? Well, come on. Oh, the iPhone SE3.
Oh yeah, there's a reason why you don't see that phone anywhere.
Well, I actually see it a lot at my school, but so it's not a true failure, but
the only SEs I've seen are like the SE2s. I've never seen the 3s.
You can tell a difference between the SE2 and the SE3.
Well, the wallpaper mostly, but I asked them individually and asked when they bought it. 2020.
Yeah. So, the iPod Touch 7th generation. That's another product that released under the Tim Cook era that didn't sell well.
Yeah, for very obvious reasons.
Well, I actually...
So, yeah, Vision Pro, it's Vision Pro is definitely not going to be a high seller.
It might
Because,
sell.
for one, Apple refuses to explain to us how it works. I don't see anything truly innovative with it.
And Apple's not explain. I don't think the Apple Vision Pro is going to be a big flop, as I think it's going to sell okay at first, but it's going to. But I don't think. But it might not make it to be too long. It might wind up being more like the HomePod,
Yeah.
where it'll stick around but won't be significant.
Yeah. I mean, they'll get an initial wave of the tech enthusiasts buying it and all that, but I don't see how you can market this to the everyday person.
Well, that's because Apple hasn't.
Yeah, they haven't shown us how this works. They haven't shown us why this matters. They haven't shown us any advantages of what this could do versus say, I mean, recording 3D video, evidently 15 Pro can do that.
They're supposedly trying to enter the spatial computing space, but they didn't explain why spatial computing matters. As most tech enthusiasts remember, or at least know about the 3D TV craze,
Yep, that didn't work.
which Apple's literally trying to market again, thinking that they can do it.
It's not going to work. It didn't work back then. Why do they think it's going to work now?
I guess maybe they think that people are. No, I don't know. Maybe Apple thinks that that it was just too early for 3D, but in reality, it was not too early. The problem with 3D is that it's never too early or too late, but just as 3D has been tried so many times by tech companies.
Yeah, initially the tech just wasn't there to make it, but now I think it's safe to say it's here. But we've realized, you know what? It's just not that big of a deal. Because, I mean, we still get by. How do we look at pictures and memories? They're all 2D images. How about sharing physical documents? Those aren't 3D, those are two-dimensional we look at. So, yeah, I don't see how this 3D thing is really going to work.
Well, something else
It's just not practical.
Something else that's impractical.
I know a gazillion things that are impractical.
So do I, but the iPad Mini 7 is potentially delayed until 2026, but it's going to have an increased 8.7-inch OLED display.
What's with the huge delay?
Yes, but more importantly, the display size is going to go up, which means that hopefully the bezels will get a lot thinner.
That's what I'd say. I'd only allow the Mini to increase in screen size if that means it's shrinking the bezels. If the bezels aren't shrinking, that's not really much of a Mini anymore.
Because that's very self-explanatory, and I'm glad we agreed on that. But speaking of iPad delays, the OLED iPad Air 6 is delayed until 2026 for the basic 10.9-inch variant that will replace this iPad. So the good news is that I guess I get to have the latest iPad Air for 4 years, even though I'll probably have a new iPad by that point.
This just really shows Apple does not care about iPads anymore.
Oh, and the 12.9-inch iPad Pro that was rumored, it's supposedly delayed until 2027. I'm gonna be an adult at that. Technically I'll be an adult when all these delayed iPads are coming out, but I'm graduating high school in 2027.
Jeez.
Alpha.
Has Apple really stopped caring about the iPad?
I don't know, and more importantly, Alpha's
Bad
probably
software, no iPads this year, and then delaying projects out for not a single but multiple years?
and more important, that's crazy to me because now Apple's delaying iPads until when Alpha's probably going to be moving out of his house, for goodness sakes.
Assuming the housing market crashes.
And assuming that Alpha's old enough to become a dad by the time 2027 the 12.9-inch iPad Air rolls around.
I highly doubt that'll happen with my track record of socializing with the ladies.
Probably won't happen, but still, it still proves my point. That's a long time.
Yeah, it's just
I'll have a
Apple clearly doesn't care anymore. They do not care.
Yeah, as Apple would rather wait until I'll probably have a full-grown beard by the time, or else my face would be trying to grow a full beard by the time this new iPad releases.
It explains so much, though. Like, why the iPad's been the way it has been for years? Apple just doesn't care.
I'm really concerned now that I'm really concerned that iPads are going to go the way of iPods, which is a shame because iPads have no direct replacement product.
That, and there are on laptops. No, I'd say there's no advantage to having a touchscreen on a laptop, but there are some applications where having a touchscreen does give you advantages in professional grade stuff. Like I keep saying, Photoshop on iPad, it would be amazing. It'd be perfect. Apple Pencil, touch display, and a professional app like Photoshop, if only Apple didn't nerf it. Just imagine what you could do. Well, not being limited to your trackpad or Magic Mouse. Heck, most artists that use Photoshop, that use the Mac with Photoshop, they go out and buy a separate tablet to use Photoshop. Because that's clearly the better interface. And this is a huge opportunity they're missing.
It really is, and it's sad too because now I'm starting to get worried if there will be I'm now starting to get worried if there will be another iPad for me to upgrade to when it is time, or else if I'm just going to have to either just start using my MacBook for everything that my iPad previously did, or else I'll just have to split everything between my Mac and my iPhone, or I'll have to buy if Google keeps this up, maybe I'll have to buy a Pixel tablet.
Yeah, because like I've got some friends who've had iPads before, and then because Apple's being so negligent towards the iPad, they ended up actually selling them.
Yeah.
Like it's not the fact it. Not only is Apple not selling new iPads because, well, they're not exactly the best products out there anymore, unfortunately. Now people are getting rid of their existing iPads. It's just... I do see potential for it to be a professional device.
So do I, but it's just not going to happen.
But Apple refuses to live up to that potential. The only reason why Yeah, the only reason why Windows hasn't worked on tablets is because it's not optimized for tablets.
And because
Even
it
Windows
sucks.
10 and Windows 11. They're just A, they're not optimized for the tablets, and B, they're not optimized for any hardware they run on at all. So, yeah, that experience is obviously going to suck, but I keep having so many different ideas on how to make the iPad a professional device. If Apple actually decided to make the iPad a real professional device, I would have had no problem throwing $1,100 for that M2 iPad Pro they have. But they refuse to do it. They give it the same basic capabilities as a cheap iPad.
I don't know.
That is my ultimate frustration with it.
The
Like,
iPad.
if you want an iPad, buy a cheap one. Don't buy the expensive ones. They're not worth it. So,
One more point I get. One similarity that I'm noticing between iPads and iPods is that the iPod lineup in 2010, right as it was beginning to fall, is the iPod lineup was divided up into 4 sections: the Classic, the Nano, the Shuffle, and the Touch. And it wasn't quite as confusing as just like the iPads. But then 2011, just like how there were 4 iPads last year, but then they haven't released any iPads this year. Just like how they released any new iPods aside from the white iPod Touch 4 in 2011.
yeah, they clearly don't care about this. Kind of makes me upset because Steve Jobs found a future in this thing.
He did, and Steve Jobs, I don't know if you know, Steve Jobs would have done so much more for the iPad if it was still under his rule.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, one of the saddest things about his passing is we never get to see what else he would do today.
Well,
And
he
while
might be
in some
retired.
many aspects, Tim Cook has benefited the company. I mean, hey, they're a multi-trillion-dollar company now. Never happened under Steve Jobs. But just I kind of miss back then when we didn't have all this stuff and they were just visionary ideas by crazy people.
Yeah, Apple is now back under, even though Steve Jobs would be 68 now, so he might potentially be at the age of retirement. Apple would still be a lot more careful about their stuff because they would know that Steve Jobs would say something.
Yeah, just like I would think Steve Jobs would immediately pull out of the EU if he was still alive.
Oh, well.
And I hate making these statements because will never know what Steve actually would have done because he's not alive. But just knowing him, he doesn't like being told what to do.
Oh, that's very true. That's very true.
Steve never liked being told what to do. So I would think if he was still running Apple and this whole EU stuff was going on, he probably would have pulled out. He probably would have gave them the middle finger and said, "All right, bye-bye, see ya, screw ya."
And why can't Apple pull out of the EU again? Because they pulled out. If Apple can here's a question to throw at everybody watching tuned into this episode or TIFP episode right now. How can Apple pull out of Russia just because they invade the Ukraine, but how come Apple can't, which is not a direct attack against Apple, mind you, but how come Apple can't pull out of the EU even though the EU is directly attacking Apple?
That is an interesting question. Because you're right, they did pull out of Russia when that whole thing was going on. I think it's Is it still going on? I don't know.
Yeah,
I
it is,
completely
but at
ignored
this
that
point,
news.
it is at this point, but at this point, Russia's winning.
But yeah, so they pulled out of Russia for marketing and political reasons and such, but they won't pull out of the EU, and yet the one who's really at stake is Apple themselves.
Oh, well, this is the reason why I haven't called us back onto topic yet is because this is a perfect segue to our next topic, which is that Apple is set to avoid the EU crackdown on iMessage.
To me, there's no way they'd give that up. That is one of the
Yes.
biggest things. That is one of the key selling points. Why in the world would they ever give that up?
They won't. They won't. In fact, they'll probably shut down on the next topic, which is Beeper.
I know I am 100% certain Beeper has a lawsuit coming in, despite that Beeper claims they can't really sue us or do whatever because I don't know what they did, but they claim that what they did was not actually illegal, but I'd argue that Apple has a case that Beeper stole a proprietary technology from Apple.
Yeah.
And
yes, they did.
And they're profiting off of it.
They did. Apple can eat. Yes, that's a direct. Apple can. What Beeper did was they jailbroke older iPhones to steal the code and get access to it, which, mind you, is and gain access to iMessage, which is illegal. And on top of that, we have to remember iMessage.
They're
still
profiting off of it.
You also have to remember that iMessage still works on iOS 5, mind you. So, because of this, Apple could easily pull. Apple at this point, this is a bit of a shame for the few people who still use legacy iOS devices or mainly Apple collectors,
AKA yourself.
Apple could pull iMessage from older iOS versions if this happens because Beeper stole proprietary. It's just like with Threads, how they stole Meta stole proprietary code from Twitter.
Yeah, that to me is the biggest case that Apple has against Beeper. iMessage is a proprietary technology to Apple. They have essentially broken in through jailbroken devices, and yeah, it's publicly accessible to see it, but they essentially stole it. It's not their code, and now the worst part, they are profiting off of it.
Beeper can be sued for the entirety of the value of the company because of that.
Yeah, that is not good. That is not cool in my book, and I would totally go after them for that if I was Apple.
And I'm sure Apple's got on their radar at this point since they probably heard.
Oh yeah, there's no way that they wouldn't take action against this. I mean, I gotta ask, what would you do if, say, you were Apple and Beeper just did this to you? How would you handle this?
Oh, I would sue them. I would just sue the. I would either sue them or I would just buy them. And then once I bought them, I would just shut them down.
Pretty much. Yeah, that to me is the ickiest part. It's proprietary technology. We all know it is. Like, it's obvious. Common knowledge. iMessage is Apple's thing. They developed it. They offer it as a service to us. And I'm pretty sure there's some terms and conditions to using it. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, don't you get a terms and conditions thing every time you get a new Apple device and you open up iMessage for the first time?
Think so.
Beeper, on the other hand, is completely bypassing that. So, yeah, I do believe Apple actually has a good case against Beeper.
And more importantly, I think I think the only reason why Beeper is doing this is because they think because the EU is going after is forcing Apple to open up iMessage, that's okay. That's okay for Apple to for them to do that. However, what the Beeper fails to realize is that Apple, if the rumors are true about Apple avoiding the EU crackdown, and more importantly,
They should.
is the simple fact that technically Apple doesn't have to follow European Union laws in the United States. Apple's an American
They just have to pay a
company.
huge fine. But, yeah. That and this hasn't been initiated yet. The whole iMessage thing needing to be opened up. That has not been initiated yet. So, like, let's say Apple does... Again, I don't think this would ever happen. Let's say Apple does open iMessage up to Android. Just like how we don't have RCS on the iPhone yet, there will still be a period where you're not allowed to use iMessage on any other devices. And Beeper decided, let's do it early. Oops. Yeah, it's not a good look for them. Either way. It doesn't matter how you obtain it. The point is you obtained proprietary technology that was not yours, and now you're profiting off of someone else's technology.
Apple better shut Beeper. Apple should shut down Beeper for this, because if Beeper is, I was watching Grant from Kind of Average Sex video on YouTube video earlier today about Beeper, as he's actually used it because he's an Android user and he likes it, but it got me thinking, if Beeper can charge a $1 to $2 a month subscription for Beeper, then this is for its service, then that's a bit scary, because if Beeper sets that precedent, then that means that's gonna put the not only going to put the beliefs that you can steal proprietary technology from Apple into other tech companies' heads, but that will also put the belief into other tech companies' heads that they can start charging people for instant messaging.
You won't believe a scary thing that Telos of Tech had mentioned on his video on the subject.
I watched it, but I don't know what you're gonna say.
Say iMessage is forced to open up because of the EU. If others are making money off of this, Apple's now incentivized to start charging us for using iMessage. Because clearly it has monetary value.
I will gladly go to RCS.
That's something I don't want.
Oh,
I
yes.
mean, if Apple does it, we don't necessarily have a... I mean, we could stick to RCS, but then we're handing all of our stuff to Google again, and etc.
Again, Google wants Apple to open iMessage up.
They do.
So it's just making... So it's just... I'll bet you this is all a big way for Google just to get everybody to use RCS on iPhones, when in reality it just isn't as good.
I don't like this.
As Google maintains...
This does not benefit consumers in any way.
More importantly, Google can charge... More importantly, Google's being investigated for being a monopoly, and they're keeping Beeper up on the Play Store.
This is not a good. This is not a good situation.
So Google
at
could get
all.
roped into this lawsuit too, and they could have another lawsuit, which again would really not make Google look good. And if Google just keeps doing all this bad stuff, then maybe we'll have to go to WhatsApp. And we don't want the Zuckcast.
I'd never. I would never. I'd go back to the days of snail mail than use WhatsApp.
Or we'll have to, Or we'll have to go back to, or we'll have to use the proprietary, or we'll have to give each other's addresses, which we should not be giving out online, just to send letters
definitely
about
not.
arranging TIFP. Or we have to give it all, or we have to arrange everything with the Zuck. And we don't want to.
I mean, thank God phone calls are still a thing. Just nobody ever uses it anymore.
Yeah, but even then,
Seriously, am I the only one who still calls people?
my dad calls people a ton, but the reason why I don't like calling people is because I find calling to be too distracting from what I do, from what's going on around me. So
For me, it's more convenient that and I hate texting on touchscreens. Like, touchscreens are amazing, but trying to type in long things is not fun. It's not particularly fun. Primarily because of the small keyboard size. But, yeah, I find calling to be much more practical. But, again, this whole iMessage thing, why can't Apple just have this proprietary technology to themselves? You know what? Why hasn't anyone else decided, let's create our own custom proprietary service and compete?
because Apple's too engrossed in this market, but that would be the best. But Beeper could have done that and actually succeeded.
They should have done that. That would have helped competition.
That would have, but the stealing proprietary stuff just to create competition, not with higher. That's not only not competition, but that's literally the definition of a monopoly. Because in a monopoly, you have higher prices.
Yeah, the way I would have preferred it to work is everyone needs to have some baseline so that way all devices can communicate with each other in some way. For the longest time, that was SMS and MMS, and it is soon going to be RCS for all of us. But if we want something more than the basics for special occasions, then we can get into other services. Like, for some people, it is WhatsApp. For others, it's iMessage. For others, it's believe it or not, for a period of time, my family was Marco Polo, which is actually video, but video texting in a sense. But yeah, the point is, it's important that we all have a baseline. I get it. RCS is going to be that new baseline, but to give yourself advantages, why not create your own service that works with your devices?
It's because Beeper wants to profit.
Yeah. And if you want to make it cross-platform, go for it. But again, stealing this technology from someone else like that is at the bottom of my morality scale, and I don't like it. That and the fact that they're also profiting off of that. That's just sick. That's disgusting.
Speaking of more ethical things, though, before we have to talk about more surprising things than another lawsuit, we have to talk about The next topic that I just wanted to briefly bring up is that Microsoft is adding a feature that's like continuity camera to Android phones, a phone link for Windows.
I'd say that's a good thing because the majority of laptops out there have trash tier webcams.
I'm actually super happy for that, since even though it probably won't work well because it's Windows, at least it'll still give some alternative.
Yeah, especially considering the webcam on my XPS, it is so bad. Like, do you remember when I pulled up the webcam footage in my review?
Yes.
That was the actual camera. I did not edit anything with that.
Oh, I believed you.
That was terrible. I did not edit it to make it look worse. That was the raw footage from that camera, and it was bad.
That looks like an iPhone 4 recorded that.
It looks like an iPhone -3 recorded that. It's so bad. An iPhone 4 recorded better video than that. So, yeah, that's a good thing for Windows users at least. The only problem is Microsoft is going to find a way to screw it up and make it as inconvenient as possible to use, and therefore nobody's probably going to care.
Alright, well, our next bit of news is a very, very surprising bit of news, being that Samsung's S23 series of phones is receiving a 23% sales boost, while their foldables are only increasing by 4%.
I mean, foldables haven't really done much to improve technology, have they?
Nope, but I'm surprised. I'm stunned with the S23. Now, this is probably worldwide, not in the US, since I haven't seen many S23s out in the wild, but a 23% boost over the S22. Considering Samsung's just an Apple knockoff at this point, that's pretty good.
I mean, this year they also had that deal where you trade in any Galaxy S phone and you get the S23 for free.
Oh, Verizon
They had
now
that
has
going on this year.
Verizon also has that deal now for the holidays, even though now is not really the time to buy a new S23.
Yeah, because if you all know Samsung, they released the new S series at the beginning of the year, not the end like Apple.
I think
So,
Samsung does
yeah.
that. I think the reason why Samsung does that is so because Apple is so that way they can keep phone sales going throughout the entire year.
I'm not entirely sure why they do it, but I mean, it is kind of nice that Apple gets their own special event during a specific time of the year, so we'll focus on them, and then Samsung has their time of the year where we can focus on them.
Yeah,
If only they did interesting stuff anymore. Which they don't, so... Yeah, I guess I'm not entirely surprised that the S23 did well, though I don't think it was because people paid for it.
Yeah. But
So,
one of the biggest issues with the Z Fold 6 is that with the Z Fold current Z Folds, is that they don't have bigger screens. So on both the Z Flip and the Z Folds, they're going to add bigger front screens finally.
bigger front screens, if that's the case, then why bother buying the Fold? Because the sad thing is, I have met someone who's not a close friend, but someone who I talk to on the occasion who actually uses the Galaxy Fold.
Does he like it?
I think I only saw her open the device up to use the big screen once.
Just goes to show you the usefulness of folding phones, as I still have not seen a single folding phone out in the wild, and it's been 4 years.
It's not there. Just like the Humane AI pin, the reason why I don't give it any attention is because it's not a game changer. It truly isn't. It's cool tech, but it's not useful. And this is the same thing that's going on with foldables. Is
And
it
the
cool
Apple
tech?
Vision Pro.
Yes. Yeah. Apple Vision Pro. Is it cool tech? Yes. Is it useful? No. So that's why it's not going to sell well. That's why foldables still haven't sold well. It's not just because they're priced high. It's because the tech isn't useful. Except for a very small portion of people out there. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that Fold sales are not great.
And I'm not surprised that Apple hasn't bothered making a folding phone either.
I hope they don't, because it just shows, if Apple were to try it, then it really shows that they're really running low on ideas. If they, say, made the iPad foldable, okay, maybe that's a different story. Or even better, the MacBooks. There was a concept back when the whole idea of the touch bar was introduced in 2016 where Apple would basically get rid of the physical keyboard and the trackpad and basically put an entire huge screen where all of that was that we'd interface as a trackpad and keyboard and all that, just because, well, the touch bar was new and futuristic. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. Yeah, sadly, the touch bar honestly was one of the most useful features out there, and I can't believe people didn't see it.
Neither can I, even though at this point, now that I've used the touch bar for quite a while, I can say it's cool, and it's still very useful and I like it, but it's not a feature that I'll miss that much when I go to my new MacBook.
Yeah, if you use Sidecar with an iPad, you'll get a touch bar at the bottom of the screen. So when I'm traveling and on the go, I have access to that touch bar on the base of the iPad, and I can't tell you how much I use that thing. And how freaking useful that thing is. The fact that Apple got rid of it and caved in to the pressure of the blind,
that just goes to
that's
show you,
sad to me.
Makes you wonder if Apple released the Vision Pro because they want to, or just because the media kept pressuring them to.
I wonder if it's just media. Maybe the shareholders even, because again, Apple's a for-profit company. They have to abide by their shareholders. Maybe the shareholders say, make new futuristic tech. That's what we want. Except they don't know that it's not actually what they want.
It's as that would make perfect sense, as Tabby Pears said back in a July 2022 episode of TIFP. All Apple cares about at this point are their stock investors.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that, I mean, when companies are young and new investors, the reason why those investors are there is because they are passionate about the products that this company makes. And they want to help them do that. But once the company has succeeded at this point, then you start to have this problem where you'll still get new investors come in because they'll see this company's a success. But the only reason why those new investors are coming in is for the money. They don't actually care about what the company is making. The only reason they're there is for the money.
Exactly.
And this drives me absolutely mad.
That's why.
And that's probably a lot of what Apple's investors are. I mean, Apple is a safe company to invest in. So because of that, you'll get all the financial nuts doing it. But they're not passionate about the technology, and therefore they don't care. And it results in iPad sales decreasing. It results in many questionable behaviors. And so, yeah, it's not good.
Oh, and not only to make this work, but another point. But have you ever watched the show Shark Tank?
I've heard of it. I've never. I don't get to watch anything anymore nowadays.
So Shark Tank.
I don't have the TV anymore.
Shark Tank is a TV show when people from young companies come to talk to the sharks or investors on Shark Tank that may potentially be interested in what the company offers, and more importantly, their profitability. But the reason why the sharks invest in a lot of the companies in Shark Tank is because they actually see potential in the technology, and more important in the stuff that they do. As one of the big questions that they always ask on there is Is any of this stuff proprietary?
Yeah, it drives me nuts how messy the investment market is. It's needed in a way, but this is once companies reach a certain point, I'd argue that truly it's not needed anymore. Because
I
having stocks and all that helps with funding, and that's a big reason why so many of the brand new automotive companies, a lot of them have gone public way earlier than what they probably should have. But the reason why they did it was because they needed funding. So they created stocks and sold them to investors. And the people who they sold them to were people who were passionate about the projects, and that's how they got to where they are. But now that they're, but now that we've companies have gotten to a phase where they're now successful and products are doing well to the point where they don't actually need that funding anymore. Well, now they're still tied to needing to appease to these people who want to make money off of this. So it's just not working anymore.
This is why this is why when I found my own tech company, if I do investments, I'll make it limited funding when they can only fund projects for a certain amount of time at the beginning, but then they have to leave. And the reasoning why is because I've noticed that whenever brands get too big and companies get too big, they just don't care anymore, as we've proven with Apple. And more importantly, this happens with a lot of YouTubers too, as it happened with Everything Apple Pro when he launched his vulnerable case brand and then stopped uploading YouTube videos and then just made everything about phone rebels and case brands. And this is starting to happen to Mr. Who's the Boss too, as now all his videos are more stupid and as rather than showcasing cool tech products, it's just now all stupid and dumb stuff that he does.
Yeah, I've noticed I'm starting to watch him a lot less.
I used to watch him the most out of any YouTube creator from 2020 onwards, and I even watched him quite a lot in 2019, but I unsubscribed from him back in May, and then I just resubscribed because I thought, okay, maybe this is still good, but then I unsubscribed again, and I've never looked back because his videos are still just not impressive. It's like Apple explained.
Yeah, I was not happy with the direction Everything Apple Pro went, and I'm trying to remember what. Oh, the final video that I watched that had officially confirmed me wanting to actually unsubscribe was an entire video about how he bought a small piece of land under an overpass and a new motorcycle. And he's just showing off all the expensive toys that he has, and I'm like, no, this money has affected you in a negative way. And I remember dreaming as a kid how I'd like to be a millionaire, probably like so many other kids. But now the older I get, I don't want that anymore. I don't want to be a millionaire like those, because I see what you have no idea what money does to you. It's crazy what money will do to you. And
I understand.
If you can't handle having a lot of money at once, then it's going to affect you very negatively, and it's going to affect others negatively as well.
And this is not only a big This is not only a big problem with just YouTube creators, but this is also a bigger problem with the mute. This is also somewhat of a problem. This isn't as big of a problem with the music industry, but it is a problem in the music industry. Do you by chance listen to Taylor Swift?
No, I hate her.
So,
I mean, no offense to her, but I do not like her music.
So I've listened to her first few albums, and her first three or four albums, I want to say, were all really good. and they were kind of like the old style classic country that the industry had been moving away from, but it was still pretty good. And then she
Okay, I did like some of her earlier stuff because
So
it was
did
more
I.
of that country style. But no, the new stuff that plays on the radio, I shut it off every single time. I can't listen to it.
Oh, and more. And then Taylor Swift, this trend I started noticing more for 1989 album back in 2014, which was released in 2014. But I'm starting to notice more that it's just that especially now it just all sounds like normal pop music to the point where last year in fall.
Oh, here's another example. Do you know Keith Urban?
I actually have heard of him because I've heard of him.
He's fallen down the same exact hole.
I don't listen to
I
his music,
loved his
so.
older albums. I loved his older albums. They are absolutely amazing. But a few years ago, he started producing music that was so much less country, and I finally heard one song where it was mostly techno, and I'm like, nope, that's not the Keith Urban I knew.
And I started, and this is while at first no one really cared about Taylor Swift's downfall, the decline of Taylor Swift's music quality, but by 2022, in October 2022, when she released her Midnight's album, so I remember coming into one of my classes the day after that Midnight's album released, and one of the girls in that class, who was, I'm assuming a Swiftie, as they call them, she even mentioned how she didn't like the Midnight's album, and my teacher, who was also fairly young, so she was then therefore probably a Swiftie, she also didn't like the Midnight's album.
No.
And I listened to it.
I've hated the general direction music has gone in.
Oh, so you don't have to tell me that.
You remember? Yeah, I mean, you the music recordings that I sent you a couple weeks ago.
They're legitimate recordings.
Yeah, I don't like using fake instruments. Like, they were. I hate fake instruments. In fact, I hate most keyboards. I hate it when you get speakers trying to reproduce a sound. And sure, when you listen to recordings of actual instruments, it's still not perfect, but I mean, it's still reproduced sound at the end of the day. I hate the default sound on my keyboard because it claims it's grand piano. I promise you, it is not grand piano at all. I don't know what it is, but it is not a grand piano. And I don't know how Logic Pro has this, but the piano I use actually has a default grand piano setting that sounds like an actual grand piano in music that has a grand piano recorded, so I use that all the time for that reason. But I hate reproduced instruments. I hate fake instruments. They don't sound good. They don't sound authentic. That's one of the biggest reasons why I hate pop music.
Oh, so
it's
do I.
fake instruments. It's also a reason why I hate a lot of rock music, especially heavy metal. I hate heavy metal because it's fake guitar to me. It's just fake guitar. It's fake instruments.
And more.
Don't give me fake. Don't give me something similar but not quite. No, give me the real thing. And that is something that the music industry has been failing at for such a long time.
The biggest part and one key note about the metal industry is that metal initially started out with real instruments, but gradually evolved to be more fake and just nonsense.
Yeah, it's not good. So,
I guess we should be, because we're not musicians. Well, you are a musician, but I'm not.
Ahem. I wanted to say, I have a concert tomorrow, in fact.
Yeah, you're a musician. I'm not a professional musician, so I can't say too much about that. well, I don't have too much knowledge in that, but other than the fact that modern music is just terrible,
Yeah.
Now let's talk about another tech lawsuit.
How many of these are there? It seems like there's always one.
Do you want to guess which company this is?
The only other lawsuit I can think of is not particularly actual tech, it's just a case.
And what company shall that be?
Casetify?
Yep, that's ding 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 ding. You got the correct answer. That
Oh, really?
Casetify
They were actually
lawsuit.
referring to the Casetify lawsuit. Huh.
So,
I wonder how the YouTubers who are sponsored by them feel about this.
Sam Cole has actually stated that he's going to remain neutral in this case, but in short, for those of you who don't know what the Casetify lawsuit is, the casemaker Casetify has been caught stealing D-brand, another fellow casemaker D-brand's designs for putting their own D-brand's logos on the Casetify
It's not just D-brand's
cases.
design. It's not just D-brand's design. D-brand and Jerry Rig Everything co-developed those skins.
Oh, yeah.
So that means they didn't just steal from D-brand, they stole from a popular YouTuber as well. And I don't know about you, but Zach, I have a lot of respect for that guy. He's a very likable guy.
He does a lot of cool. I'm not personally subscribed to Jerry Rig Everything anymore, just because I don't find his content particularly interesting. But he's still likable.
Yeah, he's a very likable guy, honest, very well-hearted. Like one of his businesses is a wheelchair business because he cares about people with disabilities. He's a very likable guy. And Casetify stole from him, too.
Jerry Rig Everything and
That's
D-Brand
not
are
a good look.
In fact, D-Brand got so mad about this is that this lawsuit has actually been going on since Thanksgiving, but we haven't talked about this yet on this show. But
I didn't actually know about it until a couple weeks ago.
But D-Brand actually a couple weeks ago.
I suppose Thanksgiving was a couple weeks ago. I'm an idiot.
But D-Brand actually tweeted, "Happy Thanksgiving to everybody except Casetify."
Yeah, that's typical D-Brand. D-Brand is very... They have one of the weirdest marketing departments out there.
Is it weirder than the A17 Pro chip?
We should probably let Linus Tech Tips explain D-Brand's marketing department. D-Brand has this way of kind of jokingly screw with people. Like, I recall a couple of years ago during one of LTT's Secret Shoppers, they were sponsored by D-Brand, and they were pulling off so many jokes to kind of roast Linus and the rest of his company. So all of the links that you clicked on to go check out D-Brand's products, they were like lttstores.com or store. Something along that line, and they like to play a lot of jokes on the people they sponsor. So
To be fair,
they have weird relationships with people, and it's not to the point where lawsuits get involved. They understand when they cross lines. They know when they do it, but
they understand when Casetify crossed the line.
Yeah. The funniest thing that I can't believe they tried to do. Remember the LTT controversy that happened a couple months ago?
Yes.
During LTT's apology video, they were joking about sponsors. They integrated, like, this message from our sponsor, and Yvonne comes in and says, "Just kidding." But at the end of the video, because they have sponsors at the beginning and the end, they try to segue to a sponsor, and then Yvonne goes, "It's just kidding," again. But Dbrand did offer. They offered to sponsor the apology video.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I'm not either. This company is weird, okay? So, yeah, their marketing relations are rather weird, but they know where to draw some lines. They know where to draw them, and this is a good instance where, yeah, the lawsuit is deserved, in my opinion. Casetify should not have done that.
Well, well, now we've pretty much knocked that topic out of the park. Do you want to discuss? Since this may or may not be one of the last episodes of 2023, depending on how how the production goes. Do you want to talk about what our favorite and least favorite Apple products for 2023 were?
The 15-inch MacBook Air released this year, right?
Yep.
That might actually be it.
So if I had to do a tier list, let me think. Starting off
And
with
in terms of the worst product, I'm not too sure because unfortunately I can't put iPad on the list.
No, you can't. You can.
They didn't release a single one this year.
Oh. Okay.
Mac Pro, was that this year?
Yep.
There we go. Mac Pro, don't buy it. That has to be the worst value Apple product you can buy, aside from an iPad. That's expensive.
So going down and going through all the Apple products and just sort of making a mental tier list like we did last year. And what tier would you put the iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max in?
I want to put them high up because if I didn't care about design so much and wasn't financially limited, I think I would have actually bought it. So, are we going up to A or S?
S.
Okay, I'm going to put them in A tier.
Same.
They're really good. The move to USB-C especially, USB 3.0, these feel like an actual professional phone, especially considering Apple used these to film their previous event.
If I didn't have an iPhone 14 Pro, I would buy a 15 Pro.
So, yeah, A tier for me. If it was S tier, I would have bought it, but
so
it's really good.
The standard iPhone 15, I'm going to put the standard iPhone 15 and 15 Plus, or the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus in C tier.
Really? Because that's way lower than what I would have put it at.
The reason why I'm putting it at the C tier is because whilst they did make a lot of improvements compared to the previous iPhone 14, the changes are unfortunately just brought over from the iPhone 14 Pro, so it's not really a new generation, so it's just a hand-me-down basically. So even though they did improve, they still didn't really.
But it's those features at a more affordable price in a brand new phone.
That's why it deserves C tier.
You sure you don't want to upgrade it to B tier? Because it did get USB-C. Something the 14 did not get.
Most average Joes don't care about USB-C.
Funny, because everyone I've talked to that is an average Joe has at least at some point brought up USB-C to me.
That's the complete opposite for me, though. To be fair,
I did not expect it at all, but apparently from what I've learned in my crowd of people who isn't exactly all tech enthusiasts, they have all at least brought up USB-C to me at some point. USB-C coming to the iPhone. So, to my surprise, it is something that they do actually care about. So, honestly, I think I would have actually given this A tier. Again, I know it doesn't seem all that impressive, but when you come at it from average Joe's perspective, I do think it would be deserving of the A tier. I'm relatively pleased with what came out. Am I pleased with the price? No, but that's the case with everyone in iPhones. Everyone wishes they came free with $5 or something. But yeah, I think I actually would have given it A tier.
Now moving on to Apple Watches. The Apple Watch Ultra 2, I'm going to put the Apple Watch Ultra 2 in B tier.
I'm not particularly impressed with it's the second generation of an already amazing product, so it is an amazing product, yes.
Which is why it deserves B tier.
I was debating between B and C.
I put it in B tier because it's still a really good product, but it just didn't bring anything new and impressive to the table, so it's B. So that's why I put it in B tier. Otherwise, I would put, if it brought anything new and impressive, I would put it in A tier.
I usually reserve that for tiers between B and S. I just realized what that acronym spells. All right. You know what? I think I'm going to keep it. You know what? B. I'll give it B. It's an impressive product, but it just didn't bring anything new to the table that wowed me. But the reason why it only gets B is because it's still an impressive product overall.
Now, the Apple Watch Series 9. This is, I don't know. Let me think for a second.
I have to give it a C. I know I'm giving it a C because the Apple Watch is a good product that is versatile in many applications, but at the same time, this watch also restricts some features, like the temperature sensor we still can't use.
Oh yes, I agree. See, I was debating whether to put in B or C tier because it is a solid product, but unfortunately, it has a big marketing gimmick for double tap to activate, which you can do on the Series 7 with.
That's not useful. Anyway. Like unless you have accessibility issue, I'm not going to judge accessibility because it's very dependent on the person. But for the majority and the masses, that's not a useful feature.
So that's why
do you see anybody do that?
No. But I also don't know anybody with a Series. Well, I don't. Well, actually, yes, I do know one person with a Apple Watch Series 9.
So, yeah, to me, I'd have to give it a C. It's still saved by the fact that it's a great product and very useful to average Joes especially, but in terms of bringing new features, it basically didn't. And the features that it did brought that were quote-unquote new, they're not useful. They're just gimmicks that can be done on any Apple Watch. That was the most offensive part to me. Not the fact that the new double tap thing wasn't all that useful altogether, but the fact that they've done it on a watch like my Series 7.
My Series 7.
Just under different branding. Yeah, they just did it under different branding. That's not cool to me.
That's stupider than the Humane AI pen.
Yeah, so it was between D and C. The reason why I wanted to do D was because of that. Software locking a feature like that we have literally seen them do on older watches. So, yeah, I'm giving it C.
The AirPods Pro 2 with USB-C, I'm going to give them B tier.
I'll give them B tier too. The USB-C port is important, but at the end of the day, They didn't really bring anything to the AirPods Pro except for one feature that we can't even use yet.
Yeah, the spatial audio with only Apple Vision Pro, which is a stupid
Actually,
gimmick.
lossless audio. Lossless, that's what it was.
Yeah, a little lossless, but which is okay. Which again, similar to the Apple Watch Ultra 2's big new double tap gimmick. That's why it's still, even though it's still a great solid product, it unfortunately just doesn't deliver. It just isn't that new, and technically that's why it's still AirPods Pro second generation, but it was still released in 2023. So
Yeah, when they came out last year, that was an amazing product.
oh,
I was very
I
impressed
love my
with them.
AirPods Pro 2 so much.
I wish I could still use mine. It's just I don't have practical situations for them anymore.
I'm actually one of the few people I know that hasn't had any reliability issue. That these AirPods have worked totally fine for me, except for that one time. But that was because
How
they
waxy do you
though.
consider your ears?
Pretty waxy. In fact, you can take a look at the inside of my AirPods case and find that there's a pretty good amount of wax.
Ooh. Yeah, okay. Oh, then again, I have more than just wax. There's a lot of skin cells that like to build up in my ears that just die off and they'll come out, and it's disgusting, but yeah, my ears are not a place you want to actually be in.
I wasn't planning
Boy,
on
are they amazing at picking up sound.
I wasn't planning on traveling to your ears, so
Yeah, I don't. So, okay, yeah. Point being, yeah, you know what? B tier. Because, again, USB-C is really important to me, and from the sounds of the crowd I've sourced from, to them as well. But again, last year's AirPods were so good. How do you justify buying a new set a year later if your old set hasn't already broken?
And the reason why the AirPods Pro 2 with USB-C get the B tier while the iPhone 15 gets the C tier is because these technically aren't a new generation of AirPods Pro, so they can get away with. These aren't marketed as a new generation of AirPods Pro, so they can get away with. What am I trying to say? They can get away with with so few upgrades, but it's harder on the iPhone 15. So.
All right, well, I think we got that out of the gate. What's next?
Max. Now, first up, the 15-inch MacBook Air.
That I was actually very blown away by the price of that thing and what it offers. So, because I'm giving it S tier. I like that thing so much.
So am I.
In fact,
the only reason why I'm buying it is because I just want more power, and I also want the extra inch of screen real estate.
Yeah, I mean, I care about that too. But honestly, if I was on the tight budget like I am now and I didn't have my 16-inch MacBook Pro, I probably would have given that 15-inch MacBook Air a shot. I probably would have bought that, but I have my 16-inch MacBook Pro. I love it so much. Why would I buy it now? It doesn't make sense. So, but like the university that I mentioned, I go there because that's where the choir is. You'd be surprised to see how many 15-inch MacBook Airs are there. It's wildly popular. So many students bought that thing.
I haven't seen any of them in person, but I'm trying to convince my mom to buy one instead of another 60-inch 2019 MacBook Pro for $1,500, just because my mom claims she needs more RAM for video editing, even though she doesn't actually edit videos. She just does web browsing, so a 15-inch MacBook Air would be perfect for her, but she thinks that an Intel Mac will be perfect, even though
that does not make sense. So yeah, 15-inch MacBook Air. I mean, that was the quote. That was the product that got MKBHD mentioned in that one Apple event.
That's cool.
So yeah, truly it's an amazing product. Despite that, not that many people would think it would be, but it's the cheaper MacBook. It's the MacBook for the masses.
When the rumors
started. It's the MacBook for the masses, but with a bigger screen. Something that I've known so many people have been asking for.
Same.
So, yeah, S tier.
Alright, then
It's a laptop that'll do just about anything for the masses, and it's got the big screen. So, yeah, S tier.
the new 2023 MacBook Pro. The new 2023 MacBook Pro, I'm actually going to give. I know this isn't quite. I'm going to actually give them two different. No. Yeah, A tier.
Well, first of all, which one are you talking about? The 14-inch or the 6 or
All of
the
them.
actual Pros?
all of the
All of them at
Pros.
once?
Yeah, they're all.
Because I have two
all
different
A tier.
ratings because of the base model.
I was going to rate the base model more of a B tier at first, and then the full Pro model's A tier because they're more deserving of B tier because of that. But I decided to go A tier because because even though they aren't that great of upgrades, the base model MacBook Pro is still an excellent upgrade, and it's finally gotten rid of that old outdated design. It's done a lot of improvements, which is why it deserves the A tier. And the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros also got a new, very nice space black option, and more importantly, they're priced, and more importantly, they're still the same great computers, but just improved, which is why they deserve the A tier, and which is why I'll be buying a 16-inch MacBook late 2023 MacBook Pro.
Yep.
Now, we got two MacBook Pros this year. Two generations.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned that.
But, the late 20... that was tiers for the late 2023 models. The early 2023 models, I'm going to put in B tier because all they got were the chip upgrades, which are fine, but given the fact
that
they
was
got
last year.
No.
The M2 MacBook Pro, that was last year, wasn't it?
The M2
Oh,
Pro and
M2 Pro and M2 Max. I
they
forgot
were
about
from
those.
January.
Yeah, right. I forgot. Those came out January.
Yeah, those are good. I'm gonna put in B tier just because they're still great and solid computers, but they just weren't that exciting, and now they've been replaced anyway by more exciting computers anyway. So
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna do B tier because at the time when they were released, I don't think it was exactly the best time because, dude, when M1 Pro and M1 Max came out, that would be the super cycle for MacBooks. Like, wouldn't you agree?
yeah, I
So,
think the
because
reason-
of that, so many people bought the Smurf out of the M1 Pro and M1 Max MacBook Pros to the point where, yeah, the M2 did get some upgrades, but, I mean, come on. You know how happy and satisfied I am with this M1 Pro here.
That's
And
why
I know
want
so
Apple
many
Silicon
other people
MacBook.
who are satisfied with it.
Tabby's satisfied with his now M2 MacBook Pro.
Marquez Brownlee is still using it. He did not upgrade to either M2 or M3. He's still using M1 Max.
The only reason why I'm upgrading to M3 is because I'm still rocking Intel, and so I desperately need a new Mac.
So, yeah, to me, back then, it was hard to justify it because so many people bought the Smurf out of M1 Pro and M1 Max that who's left to buy the M2 other than Intel stragglers who didn't have the budget at the time? Kind of the same problem for M3 as well.
But at least
So, yeah,
To be
the early
fair-
ones I'd have to give B tier because it's just bad timing in my opinion.
at least the later ones did fix it and bring some more upgrades to the table for those looking. But
So yeah, for the late MacBook Pros, I have to give two different ratings because we have that new base model 14-inch, and I think I might give this one either C or D. I haven't fully decided yet, but the reason why it's so low for me is because I still don't feel like we need this base MacBook Pro. Pro should be for the people who, for whatever reason, need all that performance to do their stuff. Having a base model MacBook Air-ish MacBook Pro, that thought to me is still ridiculous.
At least
I don't know why they insist on needing something like that.
At least the new MacBook Pro has fixed that.
Well,
With
even
the new base model, it's a lot better.
I
than
don't
the
think
M2.
the new base model is still justified to exist because I keep thinking about this. The MacBook for the masses, it's the MacBook Air. And we know at some point the MacBook Air is going to get M3. So why have an Air and a Pro other than the Pro gets a few extra luxury touches like an HDMI port and SD card slot? But I'd argue that
silly.
most masses people don't use those ports. HDMI maybe, but again, we should not be using that standard.
Actually, I would argue that the masses do use SD card slots, and the only reason is because a lot of them have old digital. A lot of them like to take photos from. A lot of people still have old digital cameras and whatnot that used SD cards, and so they want to be able to view the photos on their new computers.
I'd argue that they've already saved them to hard drives at this point.
Huh?
I'd argue that they already have imported those photos from their SD cards and have saved them to hard drives at this point.
So, but even then, that's still a very niche purpose. And actually, I don't think. Nope. The new base model MacBook Pro does not deserve A tier. It does. I'm actually thinking.
I haven't even finished with my reasoning for giving it such a low rating. This had offended me when I saw this. Removing a USB-C port? That's okay. Removing the only one on the opposite side of the laptop?
Oh, that drives me insane.
Not cool. So, if they kept it on opposite sides, okay. Maybe I could justify its existence for something, I don't know. But nope, they removed the port from the opposite side of the laptop, and now that makes using the product less functional.
Actually, the base model new 2023 MacBook Pro, that's going in D tier now for me too.
Yeah. Okay, they could have had something that, and I'm not even mentioning memory and all that because I'm pretty sure if Tabby was here, he'd definitely get it there because memory and such. But yeah, like using the ports especially. I hate having the two USB-C ports right where they are because I got flash drives and they conflict with each other if the ports are on the same side of the device. Meanwhile, this problem simply does not exist if the ports are on the opposite sides of the MacBook. And Apple's done it before. They've had laptops where the USB ports were on opposite sides of the laptop.
Pro has this feature, and it's so incredible because I've mentioned this before, and I'll say it again. It's so sometimes my convenient outlet is on opposite sides of my MacBook. In my room, it's to my left, but in my family room, it's to my right. But I can still plug it on both sides.
My Thunderbolt dock. Guess which port I plug my laptop into?
USB-C?
It's the USB-C port on the right side of the laptop. So, technically, I'd have to create a janky setup to use that 14-inch MacBook Pro with my Thunderbolt dock. Because it doesn't have a port I can plug into on the right side. It's bad design. It doesn't matter how you look at it. It's bad design. So, yeah. You know what? D tier.
Alrighty, now let's. I'm trying
And for the higher end MacBook Pros,
A. The late one's A tier, definitely. For me, at least.
you know, they did get some extra graphics advantages that I don't want to completely gloss over. I'll give it A tier too.
Alright, and for the new
If they gave it more colors, then it would have. If they gave the MacBook Pro more colors, I would put it in S tier.
Same. But what about the new iMac? Let me see.
I think C.
Same, and my reasoning for giving it and putting it in C tier is because it's a solid. Is because the 2023 iMac, whilst it's a solid computer, it does return to the original purpose of the iMac being a consumer level desktop for average Joes. So technically, it does pursue to the original allude to the original purpose that Steve Jobs envisioned with the iMac. However, not that many average Joes need desktops anymore, which is why it's more or less
Most
for
have moved on to
for
laptops.
enterprise spaces, which is why I still think it's more of a C tier product, but it's not great either. And then the RAM, the 8 gigabytes of RAM. That's still good for average Joe. That's good for average Joe.
And no USB-C accessories.
That's not going to be good for Yeah, that's enough. To be fair, they don't have to do it this year. They can do it next year.
Yeah, but still, they should have done it this year, especially with the new iMac. They really should have. I can't believe they missed the 8 ball on that.
All right.
Yeah, I have to give it a C.
The
I really don't want to. I really don't, because the
Neither
iMac
do I.
has such a soft spot in my heart. But
and same
it
here.
pains
as
me
I
to
have
do this.
two
I
of
gotta
them.
give it a C. I'm not impressed with what they've done with it.
All right, and the new Mac Mini. I'm going to put the new Mac Mini in S tier, or the new Mac Mini earlier this year. I'm going to put that in S tier.
Did that come out this year or late last year? I'm trying to
Earlier
remember.
this year.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm...
Oh, right now I understand why. S tier. Yep. Makes sense.
And the reason why I'm putting it
Best
S tier
value desktop you can buy.
is because it did the number one thing that people want for Macs. It not only was a solid upgrade, but also did the number one thing that people wanted in Macs. It lowered the starting price down to $599 from $699. So now Macs get the point that Macs are getting too expensive is now more or less a more false claim, at least with desktops. In fact,
And another thing I want to add too, for those who do want to spend more money on that thing,
there's the M2 Pro Mac Mini.
it has that too. I've debated buying that for the music set because, well, before I realized, I don't need a desktop at all. The reason why I didn't want the M1 or the M2 Mac Mini originally was because only 2 Thunderbolt ports. I needed more than that. Now I use a Thunderbolt dock, so I don't need a Mac Mini anymore. But if they had released that sooner, I probably would have gotten that for my music set. And now it exists.
And so the M2 Mac Mini is an excellent value. And more importantly, it's not. And I remember the episode that we recorded right after those press releases were Macs are too expensive in the quotes to address that.
$500 if you use the student discount. $500.
Now I checked, and now you have to actually be now they do check for ID for that.
Oh, they do that now?
Yep, can't get I found that annoying because even high school students can't get discounts on the new MacBook Pro.
That sucks. I was lucky I got mine with the discount.
Yeah, I unfortunately can't get mine, which is I know not many high school students need new MacBook Pros, but that's still new Macs.
Well,
but
I'd
that's
argue
still
with how
unfortunate.
bad Windows is, they need something of their own to actually function instead of relying on what crap the school has nowadays.
Yep, I agree.
So,
All right, getting back
yeah,
off
that's
that.
such a good value. How do you argue with that?
And then the new Mac Studio, I'm going to put the new Mac Studio from this year, I'm going to put that in B tier. And my reasoning is because it's a great solid computer and because it offers everything that people want. It's a great solid computer for desktop users. However, it's only getting B tier because desktop and pro users. However, it's only getting B tier because it didn't only gain new chips, but it's still a solid product. And remember those rumors earlier this year that Apple wasn't going to update the Mac Studio, excuse me.
Yeah, I probably didn't need it.
It didn't necessarily need it, but I'm glad it got it because it goes to show you how Apple cares, which is why. And the new Mac Studio isn't bad, and it basically replaces the need for the Mac Pro, which we'll get to next, which is why the Mac Studio is in B tier.
Yeah, I gotta give it B tier because ultimately it was just a chip upgrade. There was nothing exciting about it.
Same
And
with the Apple Watch
I would
Ultra
argue
2.
that it got it a little too soon. So, bad timing.
No one was expecting that.
Yeah, so
It's not, but the upgrade doesn't do any harm, so
it doesn't, but at the end of the day, it didn't really need it. At least at that time. I'd argue that they should have waited a little longer.
now it probably would. Now would be a better time to do it.
Yeah, but they decided sooner, and bad timing, so.
Yeah, because the
All right,
M3 Pro
that happened.
came out next fall, but the following fall. But
Yep.
meanwhile, now the next product is going to be the new Mac Pro, and that is going straight in F tier.
I'd put it in Z tier. Z tier being the bottom. That product should have been canceled years ago.
Such a
And they updated it?
We waited 4 years for the Mac Pro to get updated, and we got a stupid product that the Mac Studio negated the need for.
For me, I was waiting 4 years for that entire product to be canceled.
And it was.
And what did they do?
And it was more importantly, it's as modular as the Mac Studio.
Sure, it may have PCIe slots. It may have PCIe slots, but what hardware out there supports Apple Silicon?
None.
Oh. There isn't any. Oops.
And they raised the price $1,000.
They raised the price.
This is clear. This is F tier.
What the heck is this thing? Not only did they decide to update a product with outdated technology for its market, but they flippin' raised the price on it. What were they thinking?
That's like the iPhone SE3.
That was
What
totally a shareholder move right there.
Yes. Alright.
F tier. Oh, that thing should have been thrown out years ago. And what did they do? Oh my gosh.
Now, we've covered all the Macs now.
We can't do iPads. We can't do iPads.
What about the new HomePod? I'm going to let me think about the new HomePod. I'm thinking I think D tier for the new HomePod that released earlier this year.
Me being an audiophile, I'm actually glad it's back because I care about sound. And it has the same functionality as the HomePod Mini. Like, I don't want to give it something high because it's still kind of overpriced for what it is, especially when you compare it side by side to the HomePod Mini.
And the HomePod 2018 HomePod was also better in some ways, which is why I'm just going to. And the fact that it didn't work in the first place, and it's likely not going to work the second time. That's why I'm giving it D tier.
The thing is, it's updated compared to the 2018 though, and it's on par with the HomePod Mini. It's just,
at least has better internals.
yeah, that, and I mean, I'm an audiophile, so I will recognize any sound difference that thing produces. So I think I'm going to give it C tier. I think I'll give it C tier.
Alright, and then what? Now, the last bit of hardware, this wasn't officially released, but the last bit of hardware that I'm going to give this before we move on to software, if you want to, is that the Apple Vision Pro, even though it wasn't actually released yet, from the announcements and such, because it's very cheesy and very fishy, but still gained some press, I'm gonna put it in D tier.
This is a hard one because it's debuting new technology. It is an actually technically advanced product. That's the problem.
That's why
putting that together is impressive.
But it's just
the problem is, the problem is they refuse to explain to us why this is the future if it is.
And more importantly, the Apple executives don't seem to be very passionate about it.
No, they do not. Combined with the price tag, that doesn't help either.
I remember seeing that price tag trending on Twitter, and I remember thinking, I didn't see the Apple Vision Pro price tag on Apple's website. And then I remember seeing the headline back when Twitter was still Twitter. I remember thinking, oh no. And then I looked, and then surely enough, that was for the Vision Pro.
You know what? It might have to be D tier. It is a technically advanced product,
but so is
it's cool. But again,
2023 HomePod, and technically the new Mac Pro is technologically advanced too. It just isn't advanced.
The thing is, the HomePod is the HomePod can be useful for some. Like, I actually use my HomePod Mini all the time, and if I did want to spend $300, I'd be using that thing all the time. Vision Pro, on the other hand, I don't know how to use it.
Neither do I.
So, a HomePod Mini, or the HomePod, we know how to use it. We know how to put it to use, and we know how to get our money's worth out of it. But Vision Pro, we've got no clue. So, yeah, I have to give it D tier. I'm not excited for it, and they haven't given me a reason to be excited about it. And to me, it's kind of another one of those, the next big thing after the iPhone things. It's chasing for the next big thing like the iPhone. But
it's not, because it's trying.
It's not there. It's not there.
Well, the iPhone wasn't necessarily
like the humane the AI pin thing, foldables, or something else that AI. You know, I'm gonna say AI as well. Everyone's trying to find the next iPhone moment.
But because they're trying too hard, it's failing.
Yeah. Yeah, it drives me nuts because, again, the iPhone success was driven by it introduced a new technology that we've never seen before. but they also made it very useful and applicable to us that would drive other products like the iPad as well. But everything else, sure, the technology is cool, but we can't use it. It's not practical for us to use. And unless you get that formula correct, you're not going to have an iPhone moment. You're just making cool stuff for the sake of making cool stuff.
And that's not actually cool. But moving on to
selling that to consumers, it's not going to work.
Moving on to my Apple software tier list. In my opinion, iOS 17. I'm gonna put iOS 17 in C tier.
It is definitely higher than 16. 16 was terrible. It was not good.
Yeah, I hated the only reason why I use iOS. I didn't update to iOS 16 on my iPhone 11 Pro Max. That's how much I hated it. And I didn't even test out the beta on any of my devices. That's how much I hated
it's not good,
iOS 16.
17 has definitely made some improvements, but they've also done something that drives me absolutely mad. They've changed the default chimes on notifications.
Oh, and it's not just, which no one had a problem with, and more importantly, this is just a general problem with Apple's software, but it's introduced. But most of its features, like the voice, video voicemails and whatnot, are just so stupid and just don't really make a lot of sense when you can just pick up the phone anyway, which mind you, oftentimes phones ring when people aren't near, and so people can hear what the conversation is about, which is can be a privacy invasion. But the only new thing that iOS 17 brought that's useful is the ability to download offline maps.
I use that all the time. The time. I'm so grateful that's there.
That's the only reason why I'm giving it C tier, is because that's the only useful improvement that it brought. Otherwise, it's just a whole bunch of gimmicky nonsense that I absolutely hate.
Well, I didn't even finish my thing about the notifications. Not only did they change the default chimes, you can't change the chime for other apps. They removed that.
Oh my god! This is the worst iOS feature that has
I had a custom chime for Twitter and YouTube, so that way I know it's Twitter and YouTube. They changed it to the same default chime for other apps, and now I can't change it back to my custom chime.
There's a reason why I don't this is another reason why I don't update my devices.
I don't think anybody saw that coming, but I am not happy about this. I probably should call up Apple and ask if this is a bug or a feature, because if this is a feature, me no like at all. So that is my biggest annoyance, but on the other hand, it fixes so many problems with iOS 16.
That's why it goes in C tier, even though I didn't have many bugs with iOS 16.
I think I actually do want to give it B tier, though. Because I used the call screening thing for voicemail. Offline maps especially, oh my gosh, do I use that a ton. Because cellular is amazing up here.
Cellular is amazing where I live, too. So, haha.
So, yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, I think I'm giving it B tier.
Now, the next piece of software that we have to talk about is iPadOS 17. And iPadOS 17, I think I'm going... iPadOS 17 deserves F tier.
I gotta put there too. It's obvious I'm putting it there.
It's not good. It didn't really bring anything. We predicted its new feature back in June of 2022 before you even came on this show.
Oh yeah.
And now
That
then
and Final Cut and Logic, that was this year. I can't. That was crazy.
we don't.
Final Cut and Logic only added insult to injury.
Oh, those are both going in F tier too because they're subscriptions and they're not real pro. Those are going.
Truly,
in F tier
those are
too.
terrible apps you should never use. I'd
F tier,
never use. I
definitely.
cannot recommend that to anyone. So, yeah, iPad OS, as always, for the past how many years? Have to put it in F. It's not good. It's not where it should be. Now, it's fine for doing basic things on a budget tablet. But what about the $1,000 iPad Pro? Excuse me, $1,100. Or if you spec it up, what is it? Oh,
Over $2,000.
it's over $2,000. Yeah, over $2,000. For software on an iPad that can cost over $2,000, absolutely not. Definitely going in F tier. It's terrible. And it deserves it.
Well, I think this should be self-explanatory, but watchOS 10 is also going in F tier.
I'm going to put it in D tier. I'm not as angered about it as some people, but I still don't like it.
I don't like watchOS 10 because it changed the UI to unnecessary widget UIs, which aren't great for small screens. But more importantly, it changes the very fundamentals of the how you interact with your watch, which mind you, it's a complete violation of Apple's design language that they've only done once
They
before.
clearly
with
got
macOS 10.
bored. It was very obvious they got bored and needed to come up with something.
So that's why watchOS 10, it's going to go in. It deserves F tier, and tvOS 17 again didn't really bring anything new to the table, but wasn't necessarily bad. So I'm going to, because it did no real innovation but no real harm, I'm gonna actually put that in B tier.
I don't want to judge it because I just don't use tvOS.
Yeah,
It's not an operating system I'm familiar with, so I don't want to give it. I don't think it'd be fair if I assigned a rating to it
I don't use it either
because I just
but
don't know it that well.
From what I understand, it's okay, so I'm gonna put it in B tier. But meanwhile, macOS Sonoma, I am going to put macOS Sonoma in C tier because this is the one operating system
Really?
new OS that I have used. And it's not terrible, and it's still a decently solid operating system, but the widgets just... No, this is a feature of Windows Vista, and we all remember how good Windows Vista was, especially Apple. I mean, we all know what what Apple thought of Windows Vista?
Oh boy, did they put out quite a marketing campaign.
And then they decide to literally incorporate a Vista feature in Mac OS. On top of that, a useless widget UI that no one cares for. Oh, and on top of that, nowadays, whenever I tap on the desktop, it just automatically closes all the apps and makes you view the desktop. Like, Windows actually did this better with the
I like that.
hold corner to...
I like that. I use that a ton.
That's so much better. Windows does it so much better. That's the one thing that Windows does so much better than Mac OS.
True, I will agree that Windows does it better, but I am glad that Apple has that.
I'm glad that Apple has it.
I actually use that a ton.
Windows
I use it so much.
does it better, and it is an annoyance whenever I tap somewhere on my desktop. So that's why it unfortunately belongs in C tier. But otherwise, I think I'm
going to give it B tier.
Apple software. So
I'm giving it B tier. I was more impressed with it than I thought I would be. And I like the live wallpapers. They're cool.
yeah, that's why I put it in C tier. Which unfortunately they removed from iOS and need to bring back.
Yeah, Apple, when's that coming back to iOS?
Well, I don't know, but Apple ruined that UI too to make it to make the wallpapers impossible to change, which I hate.
Yeah,
I don't
they've
like big
really
lock
screwed
screen
up the settings app.
either. Well, do you have anything else you want to talk about on this TIFP episode before we sign off? Since we are 2 hours and 24 minutes in.
Oh, did we mention the story about guy taking his 15 Pro into the Apple Store and the Apple Store knew about the issue?
We did not.
So to add to more drama on the 15 Pros, like we already know there's a ton. A guy I follow on Twitter, Kyle Connor, he's famous for his electric vehicle content, and he's a minor tech enthusiast. He doesn't like to admit it, but he brings up, you know how Tesla is with their software integration with the hardware?
Yeah.
To explain that, he will bring up Apple and the ecosystem.
Oh, he's a techie and just doesn't want to admit it.
That, and he always buys the latest iPhone every year. Same with the MacBook Pro. Literally, he does buy the new MacBook Pro every time they come out. So, yeah.
Definite tech
He's a minor tech, he's a tech enthusiast, I know it. So, on Twitter, he did this through his laptop. His 15 Pro died. The motherboard completely failed on him. So he took it into the Apple Store, and the employees, they knew that that type of issue existed.
Oh. It so far hasn't played.
Does that kind of say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, just... I think it's a bit concerning if the Apple Store employees kind of knew that it's a bit of a common problem for motherboards to die like that, which I don't think is supposed to be a common problem on phones in general.
I haven't seen too much of this issue firsthand, so I'm going to let Apple off the hook for now. But if I start seeing more reports of this, then I'm not going to let Apple off the hook, and maybe the iPhone 14, 15 Pro will have to go down to D tier.
I wouldn't say D tier, but definitely a tier below, because, geez, this controversy is just not helping its case.
But for now, it seems like more of an iPhone 6 touch disease-like issue, and the iPhone 6 is still... Well, my iPhone 6 and 6 Plus still work totally fine now, so... And they're 9 years old.
Crap,
so.
that means no road trip video to watch. Ugh! Because he had no camera, except his GoPro.
So, therefore...
I love watching his road trips. They're so amazing.
Did you inspire...
And now I'm missing out on one.
Did you...
Huh?
Did you inspire your road trip videos based off of Kyle Connor's?
I might have. Yes.
That's...
I love the way he does it, though.
You do it
I
really
love it
well
so much.
too. Though I don't watch.
Yeah,
Kyle
I love the
Connors.
way he does it. Because I didn't realize how much of a sucker I am for driving footage.
Driving footage is actually really aesthetically pleasing to look at.
I was shocked to find that I would really like driving footage. To the point where I'll rewatch. Like, do you want to know the reason why I fell in love with where I want to move to in North Carolina?
Because you watched driving footage of it.
I watched Kyle Connor's road trip. He had bought their e-tron last year. They brought it down to North Carolina to visit his girlfriend's parents for Mother's Day. And so they had to go all the way back from North Carolina to Colorado, and they passed through this beautiful town that I can't get my heart off of it. And I fell in love with it because of the driving footage I've seen. I love the scenery. It is beautiful. That's what got me interested in the place in the first place. And then obviously I looked into more details on the whole place, and I'm like, I think I want to live here. So, yeah, that's why I really have my heart set on North Carolina. All because of Kyle Connor's road trip.
Yeah, or yeah, I like seeing. Yeah, I like seeing. I like your footage in Michigan too, as Michigan is nice in the summer, and it's pleasing to watch in the winter too. But I don't think, but from
Well,
the
as long as it's not a
footage
snowstorm.
for the footage that I've seen, I'm not going to be moving to Michigan.
Oh, you haven't even seen the worst of it.
Yeah, I'm
Because
not.
when I've started recording driving footage like that, we haven't had like an actually terrible blizzard yet.
Yeah, I'm not going to be go. I don't think I have plans to move to Michigan anytime soon.
Hey, editor Alpha DeWolf here. Yeah, we said some stuff, and you guys are not allowed to hear this stuff. And this right here is where the stuff used to be. All right. Now that stuff has been said, back to the show.
I'm out of topics, unless you have anything else you want to bring
My
up.
my only comment on that is that at least my parents, even when I'm an adult and living at my own house, my parents are not going to ever charge me rent, but I will. But if I were an adult living at my parents' house, I would have to contribute to the household.
Yeah. So,
But I don't plan on living
Yeah, I mean,
with my
I-
parents for long anyway.
yeah. I mean, same. I don't want to stay here forever. That's not what I want to do. But it just does not make sense to leave at all. I'd be broke if I tried.
Well,
So,
speaking of even though it doesn't make a lot of sense to leave your house right now, why don't we go ahead and leave TIFP? Leave this episode of TIFP since it is almost 9 p.m. where I am.
oh geez, it's almost 10 p.m. here, and I still have to record my reaction video
Oh.
to that one thing Tabby shared.
Okay, let's go. All right. As always, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the iTunes Fanboy Podcast. As always, I'm Teddy Maggart from the iTunes Fanboy.
My name is Alpha DeWolf from the Random Alpha.
And we shall join you again soon for another episode. Hopefully with Tabby Cat 406. But as always,
Hopefully.
goodbye and peace out.
See ya.